Hi, and welcome to the Route to CISO podcast. It's me, Chris Rides. I'm going to be your host, and I'm going to be chatting to seasoned Chief Information Security Officers about their career journeys. We're going to be unencrypting their real-life stories and searching for the hidden keys to help you fast-track your cybersecurity career. Hello, and welcome to Season 2 of the Route to CISO podcast. This is part 2 of my conversation with Don Baham. We were just talking about me potentially getting divorced. If you were listening to part 1, dyeing my hair and trying to pretend to be young, probably buying a sports car with a soft top as well would probably be the outcome of all of this.
I think that's appropriate at that point. Yeah, absolutely.
100%. So it's good to be back. I've also realized during this break that this polo I'm wearing makes me look like I'm wearing short sleeves. But like down here,
because of the white on the side.
I'm wearing a sleeveless polo shirt.
Nice.
This is going to be the new thing.
That's a fashion statement right there.
Yes, everybody's going to be doing it. Well, look, thank you so much. When we left off, we were talking a bit about leadership, and I was going to ask you about your very first sort of CISO role. But I just had a thought before I ask you about that. At this point, had you decided you wanted to be a CISO? Had that even crossed your mind?
Oh boy. I think I'm trying to think when I actually decided that was something I was going to go after. It's probably only been about 5 years since that thought even came into my mind. And so, no, I mean, that was far removed from my first leadership position, and honestly still didn't really know what I wanted to do when I grew up. But I eventually found my way to this role, and I think that's some of the uniqueness potentially of our industry is there's a lot of different directions you can go with security. CISO is definitely not like the holy grail. I mean, you could do a lot of different things, and I a few years ago decided this is the direction I wanted to move, and it took me, I think, after I kind of had that thought, looked at the trajectory, decided that was what I wanted to do. I think I had maybe 3 more positions before I actually landed the first CISO role.
And how did that come about?
So that was actually, that Michael, that director that I was talking, or that VP that I was talking about, fast forward to another company, and quite a few years later, he called me up and wanted to know if I was interested in a role that had opened up at the company that he was now CEO of, a different company. Mm-hmm. He was CEO running this company, and I talked to him about the position, and it was a professional services organization, which again, I'd been doing for years, understood that world. And it was a dual purpose position. I was the information security officer for the company, and then I also was senior director of their TRAC practice, technology risk audit compliance practice. So had a team of 20 or so people, and then also was responsible for internal technology and internal security as well. And so technically it wasn't a CISO, it was an ISO position, but that was the equivalent of the responsibility.
Okay, and then that's probably just a great piece of advice, because when I speak to a lot of CISOs about their career paths, it's amazing how many got some of their biggest opportunities from people they'd worked for or with before. And so that networking piece that you already talked about in part 1, but also keeping those relationships, and I'm sure not burning bridges. We're a small industry. We talk a lot, and people share details, and you never know who you're going to be working with again. So
I mean, it's so true. There was relationships that I've built over the years have been fantastic, and for Michael as an example, he's in Vegas too. I didn't work with him or for him for a number of years, but if I was in Vegas, call him up, see if you want to go to lunch, dinner, whatever. If you haven't listened to part 1, go back. We talk a lot about kind of the relationship side of things, but early in your career, mid-career, late career, never too late to start building those relationships, but especially those young, early in their career, build those relationships now, nurture them, give back to your, folks that you are connected with, and eventually it's going to come back to you as well.
Yeah, 100%. And I think A good. I'm just thinking as you're saying that, like a really good way that I think is to do it is when I very first started the company, I ended up volunteering for a cloud. It was a cloud security meetup that I turned up at, and
Mm-hmm.
I went to that, and there was 8 of us there, and I was like, oh, I'm not a practitioner, but I've run a cyber recruitment company. I thought I'd come along, and they really welcomed me. It wasn't like,
Nice.
oh, not a recruiter. It was it was quite a good one. And
One of
then I
those guys.
yeah, not one of those. But then I think also at that point it's probably a lot earlier. There wasn't too many other recruiters specializing in it, and I
No.
think on top of that,
What time frame was
this
that?
would have been 2012, so
Okay.
there'd been a few, but there wasn't
Yeah.
really anywhere near the competition, and not many companies that did only that.
Right.
And so I think also they saw me and their eyes lit up, thinking, "Oh, I'm sure he could do a job. He could volunteer for something here, right?" And when you're running a chapter of any organisation, everybody's volunteering, and I know from ending up becoming president of that chapter that that it was one of those where like all 8 of us were kind of looked at, and second ever meeting they were like, right, we've got to form a board if we want to become an official Cloud Security Alliance chapter. Who wants to be on the board, and what can you do? And that these people
And
just like,
you're 8 people. You're like everybody's gonna be on.
yeah,
it.
that's basically the board. Congratulations, you turned up.
Right.
What title can we give you? And it was pretty much, I think, like, you know, 3/4. It was at least 6 of the people that were of the 8 like were on the board, and I was like, well, I'm not a practitioner, but you guys going to have like a LinkedIn page and a Twitter,
Yeah.
and you're going to use Meetup, right? I can do all of that. I can do your social media. And
There
so
you
like,
go.
great, congratulations, social media director. And and that was it. And once you volunteer, you get like, you know, you're around for a lot of time. You meet all of the other board meeting more members, and they had a few presidents over the years after that. And eventually somebody was like, I was doing different roles there, and somebody was like,
Mm-hmm.
Chris, you've been here for ages. You've done, like, you've helped everybody with everything. You don't want to be president? And I'm like, but I'm a recruiter, not a practitioner. And they were like, that doesn't really matter. You know how to do everything. You run everything. You can pull people together. Like, and then it ended up as a president of the chapter, and then actually end up as a president of the chapter again.
Oh, geez.
You know, a couple of
Got
years
sucked
later,
back into it,
yeah,
huh?
exactly. Yeah, somebody was like, "Oh, I've got to move away last minute," and of course, everybody was like, "I got voluntold, basically, Chris.
Chris, you're back
I
in.
think you're going to be back in. Is that all right?" And I was like, "Sure." But that's a great way to network, and some of those people are honestly some of my best friends in the industry that I met during that period of time. The president, there's Jason was actually one of my guests here, Jason Wallers, and he's a CISO at Verily, so part of Alphabet. And he was the CISO at the company that we're putting on, and he was the very first president. And so I've known him and his wife for years. So it's crazy, these people, like
Because
the
you spend a
president.
lot of time with them too. I mean, like especially if you're, volunteering at that level on association board, yeah, you're going to spend a lot of time and have an opportunity to make some great relationships. Absolutely.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And they kind of, the other thing is you link up with all of the other associations in the area as well. So you end up with friends in, this person runs ISSA, so you work together, right? Let's collaborate so we don't have meetings that cross and stuff. So that's like, for me, networking, I've kind of almost made a business, not just from that network, but just from networking generally. And it's the thing I love to do. And I think people, if you want your careers, that's what you need to do right now, because it's to stand out from the crowd. And we'll talk a bit about that in a
Yeah.
minute.
Oh, I absolutely agree. I didn't really do a lot of that in California, which I kind of regret. But when I moved from California out to Tennessee, I was working for the same company. I didn't change companies. I just moved locations, and I was still traveling all over the country, working with clients, banks. But I was like, I don't know anybody here. And so, and I'm not working for a company that's based here.
Right.
What do I do? So I joined ISSA, I joined ISACA, I joined InfraGard. Those were the chapters that were successful in our area. We've since added a CSA chapter like 5-6 years ago. So we were kind of slow on the uptake there in Nashville, and that chapter is going really well.
Yeah.
But I joined those associations and then volunteered for the board. And so I've been president of InfraGard, board member, then president, same ISSA. I was actually the president of ISSA and ISACA at the same time. don't recommend doing that. That was
Yep.
not smart. But it's a fantastic way to not only give back to the community, but build a lot of relationships. So highly recommend, echo that recommendation, Chris, because that's a great way to find opportunities, learn new skill sets, just see what other people are working on. And you end up with friends at the same time.
Yeah, yeah, 100%. And which makes
Yeah.
those week-long conferences a lot easier to bear when you're going to
Yep.
go out for a meal with a bunch of people where you don't have to feel like, oh, I've got to keep my professional hat on at all
Right.
times, right?
Right. Exactly.
And I probably shouldn't have more than a few drinks,
Regardless, but it's fine.
Yeah,
It's fine.
maybe.
Yeah.
That's good. So you're in your first sort of ISO position,
Yeah.
and you've been a CISO a few times. So talk me through sort of how you made changes, you went to different places. What did you learn throughout that, going all the way up to sort of where you are now?
What did I learn? Well, again, I learned relationships are key. So how I landed my first chief information security officer, not just ISO position, was another relationship. I was, and then how I landed in this role was another relationship. I don't think I have applied for a role cold and received it since that managed service provider that we talked about in the previous episode, Karn, where we talked about his
Yeah.
journey. That was 2007.
Oh wow. Okay.
That was the last time I applied for a
almost
role.
20 years.
Yeah. And so again, relationship building. And so, yeah, from that ISO position, I had an opportunity to move to kind of a professional service company, but kind of not. So the reason I say that is we were an internal shared services company. We're a separate entity. We were built to help and manage technology, security, kind of the full stack for a portfolio of companies. So, and so we kind of acted like an MSP, but basically we would do anything. So it wasn't like, here are all of our services. It's like, what do you want? Okay, got it. We'll go do it. And so it was, I kind of led the security practice, not kind of, I did lead the security practice. We had infrastructure, data, product engineering, strategy, PMO, kind of the whole gamut, right? And so anything that the portfolio companies wanted, we were there to do it. And so I was CISO for that organization, and then I also acted as CISO depending on the size of that portfolio company. If they were between security leaders or weren't large enough to hire a security leader, I would step in and kind of be that CISO in residence, fractional CISO, whatever you want to call it. I was that for that organization for however long they needed it until they grew or until they decided to go with another leader or some other decision. So
Yeah.
it was a interesting transition. It was a lot of startups that we were working with, and we were pretty young ourselves. And we jumped right into doing things like high trust for us and some portfolio companies at the same time. I mean, it was a lot, but it wasn't boring for sure. We were moving and shaking and doing things, and definitely we're staying busy, and things getting thrown at left and right. And okay, we have this business problem. How do we solve this with technology? Let's go figure it out. And how do we do it as securely as possible so that they don't run off a cliff? But that was the first technical VP CISO level role that I had, and learned a lot in that, and had a good time doing it.
Let me ask you about that, because I always find it quite fascinating, because when I started the business 2012, I reached out and I spoke to a lot of VCs and PE companies and talked to them about security. We had I don't remember really people using the virtual CISO moniker much, but we had one on board quite early, probably 2014. I thought we got our first virtual CISO sort of 11 years ago, and there was fractional CISOs. There were people were doing it, but I don't think it was as common as what we kind of see now. But the interesting thing I found is I reached out to a lot of them, and like a lot of the pushback I got at that point was there are a million reasons a startup's going to fail. Security is such a small one that it's not worth the investment into it. But now, obviously, a lot of that's changed, and I don't know whether that's because they've realised that to sell to the big logos and the people that they want on board, they need to have it's become a sales tool rather than a worry as to why they're going to fail. But I just find it very interesting. You've worked for a lot of startups, so like how does that work?
The working for startups is nuanced because it was all in healthcare. So
Right.
that kind of, flavored how we did things and how the companies did things. And for the most part, to your point, the customers of those healthcare companies were the large insurance payers. So they were pushing down their vendor requirements saying, you need to do X, Y, Z, you need to have a governance structure in place, you need to, even as a startup, which is almost impossible. So the shared services company I was working for kind of provided that foundation and that function that they didn't have otherwise. And it would be very difficult to build that initially, but a lot was driven by large companies, vendor, risk requirements that were being pushed down that they had to adhere to. And so it worked out pretty well for the startups because they didn't have to spend the money on building that function internally.
Yeah.
Essentially outsource it to us. And even though we were all part of the same family, and we would run it for them, and we would interface with their vendors. We would act like one of their employees. We would be running the infrastructure security apparatus for them, and give them a posture that was equivalent to a mid-sized company with some of the functions and processes and programs we had in place that would be out of reach for most startups.
Yeah, which is great for. I knew somebody who's kind of head of innovation at a really big company, as well as their head of security. So they sort of had both of those, and so the ability to sort of use a small, nimble, quick, new technology or provider, and them still have the security requirements that you need, like really opens a lot of doors, I imagine, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Because I think it from the other perspective. I've known some organizations that will, like, if they want to work with a smaller, newer startup, they will actually deploy their resources to help that startup kind of build some functions and build some muscle memory around how to actually manage security. So whether it's the larger company kind of deploying their resources, which not every company is going to do that or have that capacity or willingness to, but you're right, those smaller companies need something to build that capacity, build that resilience in their security operations. So those larger companies that have a lot of different requirements, sometimes unreasonable requirements, but yet there they are. They need somebody or a team to be able to do that. And at that point too, as that startup, you're not able to negotiate anything really as far as that contract with that payer. It's here are the terms, and from a IT function, you're not, or IT requirements, security requirements, you're not really able to move the needle on it. They're going to give you those requirements, and you're going to have to meet them regardless. And so, so having the ability to leverage our team or leverage outside capacity to do that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, it's funny. It reminds me, when we started in LA, we ended up with a lot of clients in LA, surprisingly enough, and that meant
funny how that works.
Yeah, it's weird, yeah. And then that meant a lot of entertainment, entertainment, sort of the movie industry, media and entertainment industry, and so we've got, outside the recruitment side, we've got pen testing and risk assessment side, and of course, I mentioned the VC, so that kind of all came under that, and they started asking us, well, we have a lot of really small, nimble companies. That some of these companies were 5 people, but they were the best visual effects companies, like probably the most, the best in the world, right? And you're talking about 5, 10 people companies, that are then going to handle the latest Marvel movies, or
which they don't want that content getting out to anybody that shouldn't be seeing it. Yeah,
exactly. So it was so weird to be like, I've never thought of that as a security, but they've been dealing with piracy for years, right? So actually, they've been dealing with a lot of this stuff for a long time. So it's surprising how mature they were in a lot of the stuff that they did and they expected. And yeah, we ended up helping the Motion Picture Authority put together like their web application security guidelines and their cloud security guidelines, and then there was us alongside another company, and then also we'd end up doing a lot of work with these smaller businesses because we were a small business, and helping them like regular pen tests, and then we wouldn't fix their problems, but we'd obviously talk them through them and probably give them a lot more hand holding than most the other pen test companies, right? Deliver the report, bye, I'll see you in a year, sort of stuff.
Hope you fix stuff. Goodbye.
Yeah, I hope you get it in a year's time. They've not done anything, you know. And don't get me wrong, we saw some of those, you know, no matter how much hand holding you, but it was surprising. And we did see some of those big media and entertainment companies giving some help and really trying to get them through, because we knew that they really wanted
to work with them. Yeah. But they still had to meet some security requirements. So
totally. And I bet, I mean, at the end of the day, if Steven Spielberg or Quentin Tarantino says this is the company that I want to use on my movie, nobody's saying no. Yeah, exactly. Or I'm not making it, which is probably what happens. The chances are, so they make things happen, right? But yeah, it was really interesting to work in that, and it's interesting to hear that it was happening in other industries as well. So I'll sort of follow on.
It still is, honestly, it's still happening. I mean, it's because, you know, the disruptors, right? They are small typically, and they're just starting out, and they're gaining a foothold, and they're producing this amazing whatever it is, and they're not always focused on some of the foundational elements of just making sure there's correct governance. So they need some help.
Yeah. So you were doing this for sort of the healthcare companies, and then what was your next role after that?
That's the role I'm in now.
So that's where you are now.
Yeah. So that's where I'm at now, and so yeah, we're a healthcare investment firm, and we've got a portfolio of companies, and I'm in the technology leader, security leader for Rubicon Founders. Got a small team, and we interface with our portfolio companies in a variety of different ways. Sometimes it's more tactical, hands-on. Sometimes it's more advisory, strategic, sharing best practices, you know, creating master agreements for XYZ service, things like that. Trying to set some standards, which is, you know, challenging because they have autonomy to do things, but they're all in healthcare. So there's inherently some standards that have to be met. But regardless, like, there's a risk posture that we need to evaluate the portfolio companies, because eventually, should there be something, we're going to, you know, be in that conversation and potentially feel that impact as well. And so we need to kind of find the right approach and find the right way to empower our portfolio companies around security and value creation. So that's a big part of it, is how do we add value to our portfolio? And that could be in a way of security, it could be in digital transformation, it could just be, you know, relationships that we have, certain things like that. So that's kind of the role now. And I've been here for coming up on a year, I think, and never a dull moment. I bet. It's got some interesting security challenges just being at Rubicon. We have a visible CEO, and that adds an element to the landscape and the role. And you know, talk about different threat intelligence sources and kind of how we gather that and what we do with that and how that plays into physical security. And it's definitely keeps me on my toes.
Sounds an interesting one. I think I imagine it is good that you've got so much regulatory requirements in that industry. It must help, and I feel like it does drive in most companies, right? The compliance side can often drive the budget for everything, right?
Yeah, and I'm fortunate now in in my current company where the CFO is also the chief compliance officer. And he's got that skill set in different roles, but he kind of brings it together, which is great because yes, he's the holder of the purse strings, but also knows what we need to do from a compliance standpoint, whether it's healthcare regulation or SEC regulation. We have two different drivers on the regulatory front, SEC as well as HHS OCR. And so yes, that helps with budget. Like, hey, we need to do this because of this, and we're also, in addition to just checking the box, we're going to have these advantages by implementing whatever it happens to be.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's great. Well, let's change tack a little bit.
Okay.
I always talk, and we're going to talk a bit about sort of over the years and the different roles you've had. And I know there's a lot of advisory stuff you're doing as well. So there's certain attributes that successful CISOs have. Maybe to make this feel like I'm not talking all about you. I don't know whether there's any particular CISOs, and I do ask other people, like any other CISOs that you kind of look up to, or people that you think, well, I've really, like, that person does this so well, and that's something that I've tried to bring on board with myself, stuff like that.
Sure. I would say not necessarily a CISO thing, but just from a leadership standpoint, I'll start there, and then maybe I'll kind of go into specific people. But people that I've been fortunate enough to be around, whether I'm they're my direct manager or they're a peer in the organization, right? It's folks that have learned how to instill trust in their team and their team's trust in them by, again, we've talked about this throughout these 2 episodes, relationships, right? It's investing in those relationships, caring about what's going on in somebody's life and actually caring about it, not just, hey, we're not on one-on-one, so let's see, you got your kids here. How are your kids doing? How's your spouse doing? No, it's like, okay, we break bread, we go to coffee, we go to happy hour. We are vulnerable to the degree that everybody's feeling, is comfortable being. But I've seen that happen time and time again. And so that's something I've tried to build into, how I operate, is genuinely caring about people, investing in people, being vulnerable when it's appropriate, and, really trying to build the community, build us all up in the community around us. So from a leadership principle standpoint, I would say that. I think one of the things that helps do that tactically, just from a leadership lesson standpoint, is really learning how to delegate well. And that's something I did not do well earlier in my career. And I remember a particular leader, his name is David. He set an example of how to do that really well. And I had to work at it. Still wasn't good at it when I first became a leader, but practice. Okay. Now I feel like, and at this point, I think with my team, maybe I delegate kind of on the other side. I'm just like, hey, this is the idea. I don't really care how it's done. Go do it. And that works for the most part. Again, with younger folks that are younger in their career, sometimes you got to be a little bit closer to it. But for the most part, it's worked out well since I've really learned how to do that well. And if you don't do that well, I mean, I think about, as I'm interviewing candidates, okay, one of the questions I ask is, what are the traits of the worst boss you've ever had, right? And doesn't know how to delegate, micromanages, doesn't trust me, doesn't communicate, all those things, right? So if you focus on doing those things well, people are going to look up to you. They're going to want to follow you. I've had people follow me to different companies. I've followed others to different companies because of those same things. So that's kind of my soapbox around some leadership principles.
Yeah. I feel like people that the whole delegation thing's an interesting one, because I thought I was pretty good at it, but then found out I was kind of just giving the crap jobs to people, as I would say, like just I'll delegate the stuff I don't want to do, but not that it's necessarily the right thing for them to do, and then also like not trusting people with stuff. And I think it was only when it was quite early of me starting the business, and I had planned this big trip. It was a shark diving trip on a boat, but it was no cell phones, no internet, nothing for like 10 days.
Okay.
And I consciously set the whole thing. I set the business up ready, made sure people were delegated but had understood what they were doing, and I had to delegate like everything. And then I went and I left, and I panicked for like the first sort of few hours at sea, and it was good 24 hours from land, so it was
Sure.
far, right?
You're not
So
coming back. Yeah.
no, after 2 hours, that was it. There was
Right.
nothing, right? And nobody, I had to, you could send an emergency email, but I wasn't going to use that to converse with them. So I was like, I'm just not going to be around for 10 days. So hopefully I've done a good job.
Wow.
And it was amazing. After a day of that anxiety when I really, really enjoyed the trip. And then I came back, and I came back obviously to hundreds of emails, but nothing that important.
Nothing
I
fell apart.
caught up with the team, and nothing fell apart, right?
Yeah.
And people had stepped up and not only done the job that I'd asked them, but done it in some cases better than I could have done it. And I'd never given them a chance to do it.
Yeah.
And so that was a real eye opener for me. Finding the right people and then being able to pass stuff across to them.
Yeah. And you're right. I mean, they find unique ways or, paths you wouldn't have thought of, and ways to solve things, and maybe even go beyond what you had asked, and come back with something that is sustainable and better for the company, a better process, what happens to be. So yeah, absolutely. I highly encourage you to learn how to let go once you delegate something, and trust that your team's going to be able to do it.
Yeah, I mean, 10-day shark diving trip might be a bit extreme, but maybe.
Hey, it worked.
Yeah, it did the job, right? Maybe
right.
I have to persuade my wife. I need to go back on doing these 10-day trips.
And your wife better not be listening to both of these episodes.
Like, she's like, if she like, this is not her thing, so I'm pretty sure that I'm going to be safe. But there's always a chance that somebody else does, and they know her, and then they tell her, "Have you listened to that? You need to listen to that episode." Then I'll be in trouble. Well, I'm glad we talked about those attributes. I do think it's important, and it's important to always be stretching yourself. And I don't think there's any point in your life that right, I'm already there, right? There's no end point. And I think that from most CISOs I speak to, the ones that have been doing it, the longer they've been doing it, the wiser they get, and the more they see that, it's sort of everything's a work in progress. And so, I think if
agreed,
being that person's good. Now, I'm going to flip it a little bit.
Did you want to talk about specific CISOs, or are we talking? I mean,
you can do. No, we got time. Yeah, if you want to name drop a few people,
I'll name drop at least one. But Kirsten Davies. So Kirsten Davies, who is a friend. She lives here, or she did, but now she's on the role to be the CIO at the Pentagon, right?
Yeah,
so
saw that.
She was CISO at Unilever and a lot of other companies. She's fantastic. Like what she's been able to do in her career, the experience she's had, what she brings to just the local community. I mean, she's CISO of Unilever, and she's investing in the local Nashville cybersecurity community. Right. And she's just a great person overall. And now she gets to kind of do a dream job that she's had. She's like, she really wants to serve in that capacity and in a role like that. And this is her opportunity. So I'm excited for her.
Yeah. She's earned it, right? That's the thing.
She has. And now that I've been in this role or a similar role for a while, getting to join different peer groups of other security leaders, and I'm a part of several, but CISOs or security leaders have been doing this for a while. Especially if they're into connecting with other CISOs and learning, they're always willing to give back. I mean, it literally, it doesn't, I've got a need. I don't know how to do this. I'm experimenting with this. I'm looking for that. They'll just, tends to be that they will just open up their time and be like, okay, I've done this. I can help with this. I don't know this, but I can maybe, shoot you a connection here. And so Kirsten Davies is one of those people, but there's a lot of those. And again, relationship building. So whatever level you're at, and I'm part of some peer groups that I would not have been able to be a part of at a different stage in my career. But finding your community wherever you happen to be. And now I get to be a part of different communities. But again, it's about kind of giving back to the community and being willing to have a conversation. I remember I was starting teaching a course at Belmont University, so adjunct instructor. I did once, wouldn't do it again, but I did it. I'll do guest lecturing all the time. That's fine.
Yeah.
But I essentially was tasked with creating the course content, doing the whole thing. So I was lost, but I remember Nate Case and Nick Vigier helping me. I was like, I got kind of a structure, but I need some help in developing this. Can you guys spend some time? And they did. They gave of their time. I think Nick's at Oscar Health now, and I don't remember where Nate is at the moment, but definitely willing to just jump in. And there was nothing in it for them, but they were willing and able, and had some great input on how I could structure the content of that course.
Yeah, we're really lucky, and I think that's one thing that I love about our industry is that there's so many people willing to give, and I think like you've built that trust, right? People know you, they know that you're not somebody that takes all the time, and that
Right.
you give back as well. And I think if our industry sees that, right, they see people that are willing to give up and do things for other people, and then they're willing, in on the other hand, to do the same for you. So yeah, I think it's a reflection of also the good stuff that you do, mate. So
Appreciate that.
it's another way to look at it, and you should definitely think about that. And talking of which, like being at places and doing sort of various things, you're going to be one of my guests at ISC2's Global Security Congress in
Yeah, I'm looking
October.
forward to that. Back
Yeah,
in
on
Nashville,
stage.
right? Yeah.
Yeah. You haven't even got to go far. You roll out of bed and turn up.
Yeah, we'll have some fun. I mean, you're coming out from Las Vegas, and you're coming to what we kindly refer as Nash Vegas, and we're gonna have a good time out here.
There you go. Do you know what? I've got to stop. I'm actually flying out. I go to InfoSec World first. I've got a panel there. And it's the same week.
Is that
And they
Orlando?
never do it the same week. Orlando.
Okay.
So I've got
Yep.
like a flight. I've got to get to Orlando, and then Orlando to Nashville, and then I have to get back for Halloween because my daughter would like, oh, she'd be so upset if I wasn't back here. So
What are you dressing up as?
I don't know yet. I don't know a theme. We've got massive dressing up. I enjoy dressing up, and so does my wife, and my daughter, and of course now loves it too.
Yeah.
So yeah, we'll pick something. Last year we had my parents out here. I dressed up as a caterpillar, which was just this great big green tube, and I had to walk down the street like this. And I think we made my dad dress up as, what did he dress up as? I think it was a butterfly or something. It was something like not very manly. So just because it was just fun, and he
Right.
just would go along with it. He just goes along with it. He doesn't care. So yeah, there'll be a theme to it. There's always a theme, but we'll probably pick that in a couple of months' time. But yeah, I've got
We'll
to
need
get
to
back.
see some pictures.
Yes, well, we'll see about that. Maybe I'll show you them. Well, I'll show you them. I'm not saying they're going to go public. I'm not sure that's going to make a LinkedIn post. Well, look, we're almost there. I was going to ask you. Well, I'll ask you one question. Just about, because you're a hiring manager, and you've given a lot of advice around networking and how important that is. But is there anything else that you would say to people out there, whether they're joining the industry, whether they're experienced? It's a tough time now to stand out from a lot of people, right?
Sure.
Is there any sort of, if you could give them one tip, what would be the sort of one tip you'd give them? And I know we've talked about networking, so maybe something other than networking, because they've already got that one.
Yeah, I would say, and I think we talked a little bit about kind of my journey in this area in the first episode, but it's not just about the technical skills. So when I'm looking to hire somebody, yes, depending on the role, it may need a certain expertise that it's a non-negotiable.
Yeah.
But a lot of times, especially if it's a maybe not even entry level, but it's a couple steps even beyond the entry level, we can teach a lot of the technology. Like we can get you there if you don't have expertise in, I don't know, a system, whatever the role is. If you've got capacity to learn on the technical side, we can do the hard skills and get you there. It's the soft skills. It's the emotional intelligence. It's understanding how to problem solve. What I see a lot today, unfortunately, and what I think some of the challenges, maybe at the university level or even in the home, and that's a whole nother conversation, but is kind of resilience around problem solving, figuring out how to figure something out. Like just that skill set of, okay, how do I approach a problem? And I don't know the answer, but here's the method at which I'm going to go find the answer. If you have that, you can overcome a lot of deficiencies in your hard skills. So that's my advice.
Yeah, no, that's a great piece of advice. And I think as we move to this sort of AI age now, being able to utilize AI and ask the right prompts, right? Ask the right questions, get it to work in a way to get exactly what you need is going to become such a high skill set, because a lot of the grunt work and stuff, you know, we were already automating it away, but now we're going to be able to control it with people that don't have to have the top of the top tech skills, but they've got to have those communication skills to utilize it. So I think that's a great piece of advice. All right, then a last piece of advice, my very last question, I always end on it, is a piece of advice that you'd give yourself. So yeah, if you think about early career Don, like what's, you know, you've grown wise over the years. What's the piece of advice that you tell yourself, or that you'd wish you'd sort of maybe done a bit sooner?
Let's see. Well, we've already talked about the networking side of things, so definitely I would have given that advice, but I'll try to think of something else beyond that. I would say being, I know what I would say. So the advice I would give my younger self is be intentional about how you use your time and what you prioritize, because there's a lot of different things you can focus on, right? But what I've learned over time in my career is pausing, taking a moment to even write down, what am I focusing on? What are my priorities? And that could be personal or professional. What am I trying to achieve, so that I'm not pulled in different directions just because it's a good idea to do something or it's an opportunity. If I go back to what I'm trying to accomplish, it could be a good opportunity. It's not what I set out to do. And so I'm going to say no to this and yes to continuing down the path I set out for myself. And I think that's a big key, is learning how to say no. I've had a lot of things come at me, and I've said yes to a lot of things that I should not have. And so, note to self, be willing to say no, be willing to stay laser focused on what your priorities are, and make sure you revisit those, but clearly articulate those for yourself and follow that.
Yeah, I think that's a great piece of advice for everybody as well, because I think that even going old school and having literally a pen and paper, and it's cathartic, right? Write it down, make a plan, and if you like to write it on your notes or you like to do it somewhere else, that's great too. But take the time and the breath and clear your head and just spend some time looking at focusing. Yeah, thank you.
Yep,
thank you. Well done. I appreciate us finally getting this done.
We got it, man. Two parts even.
Yes.
We did it.
Come on. We'll see. Hopefully we have. This is like last time we thought we had as well. Mind you, last time we did know there was a bit of an echo, didn't we?
We did. We knew there were some audio issues. We hoped we could clean it up post-production, and here we are recording new ones. So that tells you how it went. But I'm glad we had the conversations again. Honestly, it was fun. So appreciate the opportunity, Chris.
No, I appreciate it. Thank you for coming on and being willing to do it twice. You know, that's a lot of time out of that you don't have, right? Especially when you got kids and wives and stuff and dogs, lots to do, right? So, mate, I appreciate it so much. And thank you to the audience as well. Thank you for joining us at the Road to CISO podcast. Watch this space. Next week, new episode, and do that like, subscribe, and comment thing that, you know,
do it.
Getting around to, I'm starting to make it cool. Not really. But yeah, just at least get back to me and say, that was really good. I liked this part, so that I can tell Don how good he was, or let him know. He's on LinkedIn, so you can do the same.
All good, positive comments, nothing negative.
Only positive. We don't want to hear negative. Yeah, the negatives, you can send the negative stuff to me. It was probably going to be about me anyway. I couldn't even understand that Australian guy. What was he talking about? He spent the whole time moaning about his wife and child. This wasn't the podcast.
This was a conversation about CISOs. No.
Yeah.
It's not.
Well, thanks again, and thank you, everybody, and goodbye. Thank you for listening to the Route to CISO podcast. If there's something you really want me to ask on the next episode, or if you're a CISO who wants to inspire the next generation, please reach out. I'll leave a URL to my LinkedIn profile, and make sure you connect and message me there. We're always looking for feedback, so please don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts.